If we could, please, it is 9:30, which is the appointed time for the July meeting of the Wood County Board of Supervisors. I would ask that all our supervisors please take...
I don't think your mic's on, Lance.
It says it is, but it's...
I can't hear you.
Mr. Chairman, I think you're on, we just can't hear you.
Test.
Because you don't want to, or because... No, there's nothing coming out of here.
It's very low.
All right, I'll try this without the microphone till we get that fixed. It is 9:30, the appointed time for the July meeting of the County Board of Supervisors. I'm going to ask the indulgence of everyone here today. We have a couple of special orders of business that are on our agenda that I will move to the end of our meeting today because most of the people here are not here for the Parks Report. Sorry, Chad, necessarily. Or the Space Needs Implementation Committee. They're here with a couple of the other issues that will be addressed by the SEED or Legislative Committee. So I'm going to move those to the end of the agenda. But with that being said, I would ask Supervisor Nelson to please come forward for the invocation. While he's making his way forward, I'd ask the body to please rise, and then you would remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Mr. Weiner could sign in.
Hi, Bonnie. This is Cindy up in
You don't
look anything like my wife.
No. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Heavenly Father, please grant us peace. Where there is no peace, give us the knowledge, courage, and perseverance to work toward unity and strength to achieve peace. We thank you, Lord, for the members of this board to seek the courage, guidance, to act prudently, and listen to both sides of the issues and work together to achieve a meaningful decision. Also that we have the energy and compassion to do your will. Bless this group to do what is right, O Lord. Amen.
Please join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Supervisor Nelson. First thing in our packet is the minutes from the previous session, and I would entertain a motion to approve those by Supervisor Fire, second by Supervisor Henkel. Any discussion on the minutes? Any discussion on the minutes of the previous meeting? All in favor of approval, please signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries unanimously. Today we have no excusals. We have no resignations. We have a couple of, or one appointment and a couple of reappointments today. For the Loan Review Board appointment, I would like to appoint Brian Ashbeck, and I would entertain a motion to that effect by Supervisor Hamilton, a second by Supervisor Wagner. Any discussion on that appointment? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Brian Ashbeck's appointment to the Loan Review Board is approved. Under reappointments today, we have two reappointments to the Wood County State Wildlife Advisory Committee. Those two people are Dale Weiss and Kurt Pluk, and I would also entertain a motion to that effect. Supervisor Hamilton and Supervisor Pollack on the second. Any discussion on that? Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much. This brings us, I said, with the permission of the board, I'm just going to flip this stuff around a little bit so I can get people in and out to back to work. Public comment is normally next on the agenda, but we have one recognition of a long-term employee, and I see that our Register of Deeds is standing in the back of the room. And Susan, are you ready to come forward and do that? Let's do that acknowledgement first, and then we'll get to the meat of the meeting. For those of you who don't see her, this is Susan Ginter. She is our Register of Deeds. Susan, the plaque is right here on the counter for you.
Okay. Okay, so you already told you who I am. Good morning.
Good morning.
Deb Killian, I'm here to accept a plaque for Deb Killian. She's been with us for 25 years. She started her career in child support and then moved on to clerk of courts. And for the last 22 years, she's been in the Register of Deeds office. And I have to say, she's absolutely excellent employee, and we are very fortunate to have her. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. This brings us to public comment on the agenda. We're kind of back in order here. Under public comment, we have a rule that allows 3 minutes to any member of the public who wants to speak on an issue that is going to come before the board today, and I've also granted some latitude if it's likely to come before the board in the very near future. We do have this 3-minute rule, and the one thing I'd ask is if you are here with a group that maybe you have a spokesman who represents those viewpoints, so don't reiterate the same thing over and over. And I am, because of the size of the group here today, limit that to a pretty strict 3 minutes, and we do have a stopwatch up here. So at this point in time, we will open up the floor for public comments. When you do come forward, we'd like you to come to the microphone in the center aisle to introduce yourself, give your name, and then the public comment in a little time. So the floor is open.
Good morning. This is probably one of those times I'm thankful that I talk fast. My name is Jackie Guthrie. I'm from Enbridge Energy and a resident of Wisconsin. I'm here to discuss a resolution that's coming before you from your legislative committee regarding Enbridge's Energy Line 61. The purpose of the resolution that's coming before you is to request the state DNR to require an environmental impact and proof of financial responsibility from Enbridge prior to the approval of a permit to authorize the trebling volume that be conveyed through Line 61. It would behoove you to know that an environmental assessment of Line 61 was done when the line was originally put in to be able to operate to the capacity in which it was built and farther which it was tested over. That assessment was done in 2006 under the previous administration. Following the permit application, public comments and hearings were held throughout the state. The Wisconsin regulators granted that permit in 2007. Before that line was put in, it was hydrostatically tested to pressures beyond those required for operation. Also, the last thing I'd like to point out in your resolution, before you put your names on it, I'd like you to consider reading it thoroughly. Many of your whereases contain extremely infactual information. I would encourage the board to send the resolution back to committee where we would be happy to, Enbridge, be happy to present the facts as well as the scientific studies behind the facts that were done by PHMSA through the Department of Transportation as well as other third parties. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is John Idrizi. I'm a member of the Grassroots Pipeline Awareness Group, a citizens group for finding out what's going on in our state. The proposed increase in volume of tar sands oil in the Enbridge pipeline is something that probably wasn't attended to at the time that the permits were let originally in 2006. People weren't aware of what tar sands was, and we didn't have the Kalamazoo spill that occurred in 2010 where over 1 million gallons of tar sands polluted 40 miles of the Kalamazoo River. The cleanup of that river is still taking place 4 years later at a cost of over $1 billion. Enbridge has paid $1.1 million for infractions against state conservation rules regarding the installment of this Pipeline 61. We've had 3 semi-major spills here in the state after the building of that line. The hydrostatic testing that was alluded to is nothing more than pressure testing. The problems that have occurred with the pipeline have occurred with manufacturing problems, and they do not necessarily appear with hydrostatic testing. So we've got a bunch of pipe in the earth that could very well give us more problems, and we're going to triple the volume of this oil through the line where we've already had major spills. 49,000 tons of soil from the spill that occurred in Grand Marsh in Adams County is now right here in the landfill in Wood County. This is something that we need to think about, not only think about, but talk about in our state before we allow this sort of thing to happen. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Good morning. thank all of you for your public service and giving me the opportunity to voice my thoughts this morning. I'm Rick Potter. I live just south of Nakusa, close where the pipeline crosses the Wisconsin River. If or when an oil spill happens in Wood County, what will you tell your constituents? Will you be able to say, I did what I could at the local level to protect the health, safety, and interests of the people I represent? Or will you have to admit that you thought it could never happen here, so took no action when you had the opportunity? Unfortunately, an oil spill could happen here. Recently, the same company's pipelines have ruptured in Adams and Clark counties at their current pressure. So what is this foreign corporation's new plan? Well, they decided to multiply that pressure times 4 roughly, and in this rupture-prone pipeline, and then push a more abrasive, corrosive mixture through it. Well, what could possibly go wrong? I don't want Wood County to be the next casualty of Enbright's long, dismal record of oil spills without some common sense safeguards in place. In addition to the spills close by, they have reported over 800 significant oil spills that required cleanup in a 12-year period between 1999 and 2010. That averages over 1 week. They have the dubious honor of being responsible for the largest onshore oil spill in history, and that's the Kalamazoo River one that John alluded to. Something about this oil, unlike the BP oil spill in the Gulf Coast, most of this oil doesn't float on the surface. It goes to the bottom and has to be dredged out. I live in sight of where the pipeline crosses the Wisconsin River just south of Nakusa. Passes through prime walleye spawning beds. You may have heard of the Nakusa walleye days. Where this pipeline crosses is where you see all the boats. The pipeline is located at the headwaters of a thriving recreational and tourist economy downriver. A recent study estimates that Wood County benefits approximately $28 million in economic activity from residents and tourists in this area. Doesn't make sense to put that at risk without proper study, oversight, and safeguards in place. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Government investigators of the Kalamazoo oil spill, that's the million-gallon oil spill that John alluded to, found Enbridge guilty of, quote, systematic negligence and repeated safety violation. They fairly described this company as having, quote, a corporate culture that took advantage of weak government oversight. That's relevant here. That's what we're talking about. A corporate culture that took advantage of weak government oversight, ignored proper emergency procedures, and placed too little emphasis on safety.
Rick, that's time.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm not trying to cut anybody off, I'm just trying to be fair to everybody. So, next, anybody else with any public comment today? Any other public comment? I see our mayor from Marshfield, Chris is here.
I want to talk, my name is Warren Brockman. I want to talk on a different topic. I want to talk about borrowing for the road work. I support good roads in Wood County, but I don't think we should borrow money to get us there. And there's already a program in place to pay for road work through the fuel tax. I think that needs to be pursued. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Meyer, the mayor of Marshfield. Welcome, Chris.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm actually going to speak on the same topic the previous gentleman just did. I have a different opinion, though. In the 6 years I've been mayor in the city of Marshfield, I've stood before you probably 5 or 6 times to talk to you, and every single time it's been about roads. Roads are arguably our #1 cost when it comes to providing service to the city of Marshfield. For you, it's health and human services, but roads are a very, very big part of your budget as well. We all know that roads are in disrepair. We knew that going into the frac sand issues. I think that became more apparent as we had those discussions. In the city of Marshfield, one of the things we've tried to do, and Mr. Wagner, Mr. Fire, and others have been part of this, is be more aggressive with our road maintenance and repairs. But it takes money. Now, the argument that you can't borrow your way out of a problem is absolutely true, but I don't think we're borrowing our way out of a problem. What you're going to be considering today is certainly not borrowing out of a problem. It's using the fiscal tools that you have at your disposal to fix a problem. Certainly, we don't want to extend debt onto future generations, but we also don't want to extend the existing infrastructure problems we have onto future generations. I would encourage you today to seriously consider the resolution, which, in my understanding, does not bind you to actually borrowing money. It simply allows the county the flexibility to look at what could be possible and present to you in a budget what could happen and how we could resolve many of the road issues we have in Wood County. So again, I would encourage you to consider supporting that resolution today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other public comment today?
My name is Nancy Carlstead, and I live south of Nakusa along the pipeline. And I and a couple of the neighbors are here just to encourage the board to please do everything we can, that all due diligence for studies are done, because we not only live along it, we now are looking at the facts of what could go on with the increased pressures, and are starting to live in fear as it runs within 100 feet from bedroom windows and under our animals and so forth. So please consider the people along the road and ask for due diligence. An environmental assessment is a way lot less than an environmental impact statement, and many things have changed. So please request an environmental impact statement.
Do we have any other public comment? I've got our maintenance department here. Is this microphone loud enough yet?
No.
Can you hear me?
It's better.
It's better than that. Real loud yet?
No. Yours or mine?
I'm sorry. If it's not loud enough, we'll turn it up. Can everybody hear that? A little bit up there? I'm hearing they want it up a little bit. Is that possible? Okay, so go ahead, sir.
All right, I'm Bill McCushion, also with Enbridge. I thought I'd even things out just a little bit here. I'm also a property owner in northern Adams County. Couple things before you make a decision on the Enbridge resolution. Number one, the line is in the ground already. It was approved by federal and state regulators in 06 and 07. You may recall that the administration at that time was Democratic. Most recently, Enbridge got a permit, an air permit to expand their Superior facility under a Republican administration. So the folks that have the expertise to do these things, the environmental impact, the environmental assessment, they've already done it, and they've been approved by both a Democratic administration and now a Republican administration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other public comment? Any other public comment? All right. I guess the first thing I want to do is thank those people. I can hear it going up. I want to thank those people from the public who took the time to be here today. I also want to thank them for the respectful conversation and discourse on this particular issue. So thank you very much. Is that Supervisor Wagner?
Mr. Chairman, would it be in order to ask for a suspension of the rules and to bring Resolution 5-1 to the floor at this point, so that the folks attending for that purpose could get it, could hear the vote?
No, that's not a problem. In fact, if the board's good with that, I don't have a problem. I was actually going to move all the special orders of business to the end, and it still would have taken a while to get there. So if that's the desire of the board, they'd like me to bring that forward right away, we will. Is everybody good with that? All right, I believe that's page 111
I think so.
in the packet. Page 111 in the packet. Now, I'll give you a minute to get there. 112, actually. Just happens to be the back of the page. So it's page 112 and 113 in the packet. Page 112 and 113 in the packet. I'm going to give the clerk a minute. I told our clerk that I wouldn't probably change direction on the resolutions. I would just move that forward, but we'll just give her a second to catch up. What's the penalty for doing that to you?
Kick under the table. Under the table.
Okay, so we are at page 112 and 113. It's a resolution brought forth by the Judicial and Legislative Committee. And I would ask the clerk to please read the resolution.
A
Okay, this will be Resolution 14-7-1 to request the state DNR to require an environmental impact statement and proof of financial responsibility from Enbridge Energies prior to the approval of a permit to authorize trebling the volume of oil that can be conveyed through the Line 61 pipeline. Fiscal note, there is no direct cost to the county resulting from the adoption of this resolution or the state's implementation of the proposal suggested herein. Failure of the state to implement the proposals here could lead to catastrophic costs, potentially to Wood County.
Okay, you've heard the reading of the resolution. Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Bryce, second by Clendenning. All right, we will open this up for discussion. Is there any discussion? I'll start with Supervisor Wagner.
I don't believe that there's any chance that this permit or that this thing is not a done deal. I think this is going to happen. The only reason I agreed to bring this to the floor and let the county board vote on it is I think the citizens of Wood County and this county board as the representatives and the stewards of the lands of Wood County deserve the right to petition DNR about our concerns and tell them what our concerns are. If this resolution does no more than tell them that A, if you're going to increase the capacity of this pipeline, Enbridge, you will do it safely, you will do it to the best scientific knowledge that you have in doing it. And number two is if something goes wrong, you will stand responsible for the cleanup and you will do so in a timely and effective manner. That's basically the only thing that we want to petition the DNR to tell them here. I think that, I know we can quibble about the wording of the resolution all we want, but I think that we owe it to the citizens of our county to tell DNR what our concerns are and to go on record with those concerns. And that's why I brought this to the floor. Thank you.
Supervisor Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I speak in opposition to this resolution. I agree with some of the arguments. Mr. Wagner made a good point. But the one thing we have to realize is as we leave this building shortly or whenever we do, we're all liable to have an accident or have something happen. It's part of life, I guess you would say. The concern I have, I'm very familiar with Lakehead Pipeline, which was before Enbridge took it over, and I spoke to many people from Superior on down to here that are very pleased with the Enbridge people because of their considerations and working with the landowners that the land they went over, and they had no problems, and if there was a problem, it was taken care of quickly. The other thing I think that we have to really realize is the fact that pushing this oil underground is by far more efficient and more likely to have less accidents than having it pushed down on the railroad tracks. You take one tank car and you have one disastrous calamity. The other thing is, if we don't provide the provisions to transport oil from the oil fields to the refinery, what we are doing is we're saying, all right, the Arab nations in the Middle East, we're going to have to continue bringing your oil in here. And we all know the prices we paid before. And we have a product, we should use it to our own benefit. And other than that, I could go on, but I think I said enough. Thank you.
Supervisor Clendenning, and then Supervisor Roser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just going to be brief. 26 years ago, I was involved in the Little Plover River study, in which that study went on with DNR, farmers, and the like. I lived in the Plainfield area and also owned land and farm in Portage County. Everything that they said would not happen to the Little Plover River happened. And now they're doing another study on it. The Little Plover River has very little water because we as protesters at that time said we thought that would happen. So I know this was done in 2006 and 2007. That's a little sooner than the Little Plover River.
Supervisor Roser?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was a little disappointed that this resolution was not co-sponsored by the Seed Committee because of the land conservation aspect of it, and I guess I would like an explanation of why this was just brought before us by the Judicial and Licensing Committee, and was their input received by people who know about land conservation?
The committee doesn't have to answer that, but if there's somebody who would like to answer that, I'd be probably happy to entertain that answer. No one on that? Supervisor Lynch?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd have to agree with Mr. Nelson. And also, I'd like to pass on that I've dealt with Enbridge personally, and they're very safety conscious. As an example, their facilities, most all are fenced in. You can almost say that they're guarded. And if you're going to do business with them, you have to have a 2-hour safety course, among a bunch of other things, hard hats, safety vests, steel-toed shoes, etc. They're very concerned about safety, and I think they do a good job of, taking care of it. Thank you.
Supervisor Mahan?
Thank you, Mr. Am I on?
You're supposed to be anyway.
Talk about it. That's okay. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I guess.
Keep it up just in case, so that they pick it up there.
Pick it up.
Okay, again,
Pick it
thank
up.
Okay. Again, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm glad to see that Wood County's talking about these issues this morning because it leads directly to what I would like to see defined as a legacy for this county board. Not only a legacy of fiscal prudence, but also one of concerned stewardship for our natural resources. The same natural resources that we hold so near and dear in this state, in this county. And I, for one, will not gamble for a second on those natural resources for the sake of $1. This resolution asks nothing of the county financially. I think it's good policy. I will support it.
Go ahead, next. Supervisor Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got a question. I know the procedure, you probably can't answer it or won't answer it, but...
But I can probably defer to somebody who...
Right, you probably can. The way I read this resolution, it's a request. It's not, the DNR can ignore us, they can accept it. There's no way we know what might come of this.
I can answer that. That's a true statement.
Right. I just wanted to, if the public isn't aware of that, I want, that this isn't the county passing an ordinance or putting some, it's possible it could be restrictive to whatever party. Thank you.
Further discussion? Further discussion on this resolution? All right, I see none, I hear none. I would ask the board to please vote. That resolution passed 13-6. The resolution passed 13-6. Thank you. Thank everybody for their public input on this, and obviously, I guess, Bill, a copy of this gets forwarded on to somebody. The state, what's the next step? To the governor, the secretary of the Department of Natural Resources, so on and so forth. It is advisable. So we will get back to the packet then. I'm going to put these pages back in order here. Okay, that takes us to page 6 in your packet, page 6 in the packet, and that is the Executive Committee meeting minutes of June 17th. That's page 6. Page 7, the Executive Committee meeting of Tuesday, July 1st, as well as page 8. Page 9, the Wellness Board meeting minutes of Monday, June 16th, as well as page 10. The Human Resources Monthly Letter of Comments is on page 11, and is our new HR Director in the back here. I know we've done a quick introduction in some places, but Connie, if you'd like to come up to that microphone, maybe there's a couple of people who have not met you yet, and just quickly introduce yourself. Yeah, that'd be great.
Well, for those of you who haven't met, I'm Connie Janowski, the new HR director, just started yesterday. So I'm very pleased to be joining you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Glad to have you on board. I will say, for those of you who weren't involved in the process, we had some very strong candidates, and Connie actually stood out, and I think we will have a very successful and great run with her in charge of that department. Page 12 of your packet is Safety and Risk Management, their letter of comments from June. The Finance Department's monthly letter of comments on 13 and 14. The Investment Report on page 15 and 16. Interest rates on 17. Various pieces of information along that line, 18, 19. Where our money is and what it's doing. Comments from the county clerk on page 20. Comments from the systems department and their update on 21. The maintenance department's monthly letter of comments for July on page 22. The wellness update on 23. And that brings us to the resolution on page 24 in your packet. This resolution brought forth by the Executive and Highway, Infrastructure, and Recreation Committee.
This will be Resolution 14-7-2, initial resolution authorizing the issuance of general obligation promissory notes, fiscal note not to exceed $4,850,000.
Okay, this resolution came before us last month. We're allowed by county board rules to bring a resolution before the board on 2 occasions without permission of the board to bring it back an additional time. I wasn't clear at that time when some people brought forth questions if it was a, does no mean no, or was there full understanding of the issue? And it was thought that bringing this back this one time might be beneficial to everybody with some additional information. I'm guessing that this time around I will probably speak to this resolution, so at this time I'm going to turn the gavel over to Vice Chairman Minor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The resolution has been read. I don't believe we have a motion to bring it to the floor. I have a motion by Wagner and a second by Supervisor Nelson. I apologize, people's heads are hidden from down in this aspect.
I'm sorry, who was the first?
Wagner.
Okay.
And then Supervisor Nelson. No, I saw it. That's kind of bottom down there, so I figured you probably made a motion. With that, we'll open it up for discussion. Is there any discussion on this resolution? Supervisor Wagner.
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and the mayor mentioned that we have been very judicious and creative with the use of debt in the city of Marshfield for exactly this purpose. The mayor knows that I've been a one-note singer on roads and infrastructure in the city of Marshfield. And what we've managed to do is find a way of using debt to keep it at a certain level so that the tax rate remains the same, but we still get our infrastructure fixed and repaired. The Wood County Board has been very, very good about maintaining the tax rate. They have. But we're paying a price for it. And the price we're paying for it now is that we have created a structural deficit that we will have to address every year. And as I understand it, that structural deficit is about $1.8 million a year. So the question is how we fund the deficit so we don't have to cut services to our constituents and maintain our infrastructure. The only way to do it is to do something that we've been loath to do in the past, and that's incur debt. The consultant gave us a plan for doing this. That was Springstead, if I understand correctly. Springstead gave us a plan for doing this over 10 years. I'm not totally sold on the 10-year plan, but I know that the immediate need is 1.8 million plus whatever the roads are, plus the cost of the towers. The only way we're going to manage to do that is to incur the debt for it. And for that reason, I'm going to support this. I was thinking on the way up here today, I had an old German great-grandfather, and he always used to point his finger in my chest and say, if you get too soon old and too late smart, well, I'm old, and I'm smart, and I think we should borrow. So, thank you very much.
Further discussion, Supervisor Clendening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm voting no on this resolution. Same old thing, we're not using our legislators at all. They don't come to our legislative meetings that we have here at the county. And what we're doing is going directly to our taxpayers, and the county is an arm of the state. Well, why aren't we hammering on our legislators to get us money? We send $1 down there, what do we get back? Obviously, we don't care. We don't care what we get back. We don't want any of that money back for the gas tax that pay. And they had plenty of time to come up with a different way, and they haven't come up with a different way to fund our roads. Our towns, cities, and villages are going to have to do the same thing. I had several calls on this, and I had a shouting match right here in the courthouse from a constituent. I call him a constituent because he's from Wood County. And he said, you know, you're one of those five clowns that voted against that resolution. And I thought that was pretty good, you know. Call me a clown. I think I am funny once in a while. But the thing of it is he said, I'm willing to pay $10 a year to have my county road out there fixed. And then I've heard other people call me and say, you know, okay, you know, our town roads are really bad and you voted against this thing. People don't understand it. I think we should be contacting our legislators.
Further discussion, Supervisor Winch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last month I talked about the PECFO fund and the transfer fees and the monies that I thought could be made available through that route. And that led me to talking to our 3 local legislators, Spiros, Burley, and Pruitt. Anyway, presently the taxpayers statewide are paying 30.9 cents a gallon to the state transportation fund. That fund sends money to the counties in the form of general transportation aid. The problem is the gas tax goes to the general fund and gets spent for other purposes and has not kept pace with the increased cost of road maintenance. If we as counties borrow money to maintain our roads, then 2 things will happen. The state will continue to spend gas tax money on other purposes, and the taxpayers will pay twice for our road maintenance. If we're looking for rapid economic growth, we should not be taxing taxpayers for the same purpose twice. If we borrow the money at the county level, we are simply condoning the bad habits of the state. And by the way, Amy Sue sent me a list of a number of funds that are collected for a given purpose, but are spent on other purposes. It's not just the gas tax. Point being is that they need to change their habits. Anyway, I've also been assured by all 3 of the local legislators that there will be a referendum coming out in November, asking the public if they believe that the state gasoline tax should remain in a segregated fund for roads only. If road maintenance is paid with gas tax money, the entire state contributes to road maintenance in Wood County. If we borrow the money at the Wood County level, it's going to be billed to the local Wood County residents on top of what we're already paying. We're billing them twice. It's not like as if we don't spend money on roads. I think the highway budget is in the neighborhood of, what, 11 million? And we're spending, according to Mike, $2.1 million on construction. We're receiving about 1.6 million of that through the general transportation aids, and the other 2.8 million is already being on the tax levy. So I'm voting no again. Thank you.
I love the Supervisor Lynch because I told you I was going to do this, but Doug Pasano, and I'm not giving my opinion, Mr. Chairman, so I'm going to keep the hammer. But actually, Doug Pasano in the Highway Department archives, this was a topic of discussion. Back in 1926, that'd be 88 years ago, there was a resolution before the county board, resolution number 2, that opposed to any reduction in funds diverted from the gasoline tax. So this has been a long time coming. I think you probably voted for that resolution too back then.
No, I'm only 3 years older than Dirk.
Further discussion, Supervisor Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I raised today to talk a little bit, I guess, about my vote. I voted no. I was one of the clowns that Mr. Clendenny talks about. I voted no. Although I've received a lot of comments on this, public comment, but I haven't met that gentleman yet. The reason I rise, I don't know if I agree with Supervisor Wagner, but I sensed some reluctance in his speech, and I have that reluctance too. We can talk about what's happened in the past. I got a problem with the budget. I think we've created our own problem here and I'm trying to articulate this the best I can. With our attitude, we've budgeted money and starved out certain departments. We didn't look at what our consequence, well, I shouldn't say, I can't say what somebody would have done, but we didn't plan for the consequences. So we've in some way created our own problem here with underfunding. We've got a structural deficit. I don't deny that. I don't deny that our roads need work. This is a political answer there. But I question whether borrowing's the way out of this. The state has caused some of this. You can blame them, but that's water under the bridge too. There's nobody left. We're the bottom of the food chain. There's nobody else to go to. I guess my biggest problem is if we borrow the money, and that appears that we're going to do, or we were requested to do, this is a long-term plan. This is a 10-year plan. Are we going to continue to borrow, or do we have a plan that somehow we're going to raise money some other way? Now, it's easy to say we haven't raised taxes. That's a noble thing to do, and the taxpayers will all agree with that. But it's obvious we can't continue. We've either got to borrow our way out of this, or we've got to fund it through the levy. And I think without a plan, I'm not going to support this. Thank you.
Further comments? Supervisor Nelson?
Thank you. I run across an interesting picture, I guess you could say, and I believe it should be part of the motto of the Highway Department. And Mr. Minor has a picture, if you find it of any use, but
Gave it to Supervisor Lynch. I think he probably has it right at his desk.
okay. But anyways, I have to state the fact that borrowing is a very prudent tool if it's used correctly. Now, if you build a house, and the first day you move in, you pay for it completely? I don't think so. When we do these roads for at least 20, 25 years or more, shouldn't we spread the cost out over all the people that are using it during that time period, instead of bundling it all at one particular tax season? And also there is the one thing which I spoke to before, and I'll say it again, is there is a concern that if this is passed, that the bids for the road construction be put out for private industry. And I say that because the highway crew right now is working very efficiently, getting done what has to be done. But if we put it out for public bids, they will do the necessary heavy work, and the crews can continue doing the work that they're doing. So we come out with twice as much accomplished in 1 year. And I believe this resolution only says that we will borrow each year, not every, for one big bundle for 10 years or whatever. So I feel very strongly that we need the roads to be kept up. They're not in good shape, and if they get too far beyond, we're gonna have to spend 2 or 3 times as much money to rebuild them when we can do it more efficiently now. So that's my stand on it. Thank you.
Supervisor Rozar.
I remember back in the 90s when I was down at the state capitol, and I said to one of the legislators something about our highway infrastructure up here, and I was a little bit discouraged, and I think this attitude continues down in Madison, is the statement was made to me, you guys are lucky to get any money up north for any of your roads. And I thought, you know, that really is sad if that's attitude, and I think that's continuing probably to this day. Unfortunately, the state's got their own problems with their highway infrastructure. You know, they've got the whole Milwaukee infrastructure with their bridges and all of that mess. And while I don't disagree with you that I don't like my money going totally to the state highway infrastructure, I drive on those roads too. So I need those roads to be good because I don't want to go across a bridge and have it collapse into the water. So for me, it's just as important to fund the state highway infrastructure, and if I have to pay a little bit of extra tax money to not repair my car all the time as I'm hitting potholes and things like that, I'm willing to do that because we do have a responsibility to maintain our highway infrastructure, and it ties right back to economic development. Nobody is going to come to this county unless we have an adequate transportation infrastructure. And I think the mayor of Marshfield made excellent points about how we need to work together because we drive on all of those roads all of the time, and it takes money. And you know, if you've looked at how the cost of a mile of highway construction and rebuild has increased in the last since 1926 probably. I mean, it is astronomical, and we've got to suck it up and support it, or we're going to do, as Supervisor Nelson says, just getting worse and worse trouble, and we're going to be up the creek without a paddle.
Further discussion, Chairman Quinnell.
I had probably about a dozen calls on this issue. Most people, when they call that opposed to the issue, opposed to the borrowing, until I told the story. So I'm gonna change this a little bit. I'm gonna try to tell this story from a little bit different angle. We already had a very detailed report from the highway engineers, from our finance director on how it would impact tax levy, on what would be done in this roughly 30 miles of improvements that they are proposing. I guess where I want to come from is our board and our philosophy hasn't changed over time. As a board, we've always thought it was much better to leave money in the taxpayers' pockets than to establish a savings account in the county and later use that for some undesignated purpose. We certainly shouldn't tax excessively and save your that hard-earned money. For 16 years roughly, we have not increased the tax rate. You could say that's been good and that's been bad, but the philosophy has been better left in your pocket during that entire period of time. So when I tell these people this story, and I say we've left it there at a time when we could have increased the tax rate significantly, they start to get a little bit of the feel of what we're looking for. And I'm hoping that at the time that we ask for dollars, they understand that we really need those dollars. We as a board have been exceptionally fiscally responsive. We always, in every department, in every committee, look at the most cost-effective way to do business. It's not always the cheapest, but in the long run, it's the most cost-effective way to get things done. I hope that the taxpayers and those people that are here today and those that I've talked to on the phone realize that we wouldn't ask for the money if we didn't need the money. We have a developing situation here that needs immediate attention. We have about 30 miles of roads, and I added that up, that need work sooner or later. And I'm going to liken this to my house. If I have a leak in the roof, you know, Jerry mentioned paying for a house, but if I have a leak in the roof, I typically reshingle it before the floors buckle and the walls start to rot and collapse. It makes much more sense to do the immediate maintenance and lengthen out the time before we have to do a real major reconstruction of the entire highway system. It's been brought up before, but I would venture a guess, and I think Mr. Brockman probably fairly eloquently stated that he'd rather not borrow, but I would venture a guess that anybody in this room who's ever purchased a house, who's ever expanded a business, bought a business, has borrowed either taken a mortgage or borrowed capital to run that business. And this is a time when we really need to do that. It's extremely economically prudent to borrow that money now. It will save us money in the long run. The other thing I wanted to clarify is this is a one-time single event. This bonding issue says not to exceed $4.8 million. As we look at the budget, as we develop it this year, it may not be that amount. It may be less. One of the things that we always look at is the impact to the taxpayer. the total impact. When we talk space needs, and I think Mr. Wagner brought this up last month, but when we look at the total budget, these numbers may change somewhat. It says not to exceed, and my guess is it may come in significantly less. We can do about 1.8 million with no effect to the tax levy. That 1.8 was bandied about. All that does is fill that structural deficit. The other thing I wanted to make really clear is this is a one-time single event. This is not a long-term commitment. If we want to proceed with the plan as developed, they have to come back every year and ask for the same process and an additional amount of money. So this isn't a money grab. This is a place where we really need to take care of our roads and do that maintenance. To address Supervisor Lynch, and Bill, I think you made a really good point. There is a referendum at the state level. I believe it will pass. But there will be an unbelievable grab for that money in a big hurry. And just by nature of population, there's a much greater population base in Milwaukee, Madison, the southeast area of the state. They have the majority of legislators, and that's where the majority of that money will go. I personally don't see a better way of doing this right now. I'm going to support this resolution, and those of you who know me and have been here about the 16 years I've been have seen that I don't spend money unless it's really needed. But if it was, and I try to look at this as if it were my household or my business, would I do this now? And the answer for me is yes. Thank you.
Further discussion? Any further discussion? Supervisor Lynch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't disagree that there's some roads that are in dire straits, but I don't know where you got that picture. That's been in the town of Hiles. But anyway, you know, I travel a lot of these county roads, township roads, etc. And there are some that need some work. But like I said, you know, we're already spending, you know, that's what, $4.3 million to maintain these roads. And there's some that need to be fixed up. But now, why are we borrowing this money at this point if we're not doing the work till 2015? Can we not wait until this referendum is passed? And all of these legislators that I've talked to are telling me that they're working very hard on changing all of this and getting the transportation budget in order and spending it appropriately. And I have faith in that, and I think we can wait until that's resolved and then go from there. Thank you.
Further discussion? Supervisor Hinkle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I strongly support this bonding issue, and I do not support debt. This is a time when we need to borrow and get these roads back into shape, both for economic development and for the prudent use of money. There's a lot of county road out there that is pretty near an unmentionable state. Thank you.
Any further discussion on this topic? Seeing none, please vote. Supervisor Nelson, if you would please confirm, and Supervisor Pollack, if you would please confirm as well. That resolution does pass the three-quarter vote needed by 15 to 4. And with that, Mr. Chairman, your hammer.
Thank you. We'll get back in the packet. This is the first step in a process, just so you know that. This will come before the board again when we determine, you know, what that amount will be, where it will be spent, how it will be spent. But this is a first step in a budget process, just so you're aware of that. Takes us to page 25 in the packet.
This will be Resolution 14-7-3, tax deed eligible property. Authorize the tax deeding of property in compliance with Section 75.14 Wisconsin statutes. Fiscal note, taxes 2009 through 2013 of $6,376.06, plus special charges, publication fees, tax deeding expenses for a total of $7,008.26.
I have a motion by Clendenning to approve. Do I have a second? I have a second by Hamilton. Is there any discussion on this resolution? Any discussion on this resolution? Seeing none, please vote. That A resolution passed 19-0. Takes us to page 26 in your packet, the minutes June 30th of the Health and Human Services Committee, as well as page 27 and 28. Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Minor.
It seems like there's some of the minutes missing from the Health and Human Services Committee. I mean, it goes from 26 and then it abruptly ends. Can we have those submitted again for the next month's packet, please?
Are you guys, I've got 27 and 28. Are you missing those in the electronic?
But the 27 I have in...
Oh, that's right, I'm sorry. You're right.
So I think we're missing, well, everything else that happened in that meeting. So if we get those resubmitted for next month, please.
I apologize, that is right. You know, I was going through that. That's the North Central Community Action minutes on page 27. All right, so we'll get the rest of those minutes. We'll get those to the packet. Okay, it was a two-sided error. We'll get it in there. We're working out this electronic thing too. Page 27 in your packet, North Central Community Action Program, their May 12th meeting. That's 27 and 28. The Health Department's report from June 30th on 29 and 30. The Human Services Department report from Director Redder on page 31, 32. The Norwood update on 33, 34. The Veteran Service Officers report from June 30th on 35 and 36. Report from Edgewater Haven on 37. Supervisor Rosen.
Amy, I didn't tell you I was going to do this, but I'm going to say something about the open house. Is that okay, or you don't want me to? Okay, I'm saying it. We are hoping that the administration building at Edgewater Haven is going, so I'll condition this, Amy. We're planning on having an open house after county board in August so that you guys can come and see the construction and hopefully everything will be done. If it's not going to take place, I'll let you know. And but kind of tentatively plan on that to happen so that you can come out and look at it and see what we've done to improve the care of our elderly in Wood County.
We also, I'll digress a moment, we also have a conflict with the trial yet that date that has not been resolved. We may be meeting there, or the auditorium or somewhere else. We're still waiting on word on that, but we're working on that one. So that was page 37, the Edgewater report. Minutes of the Wood County Public Safety Committee of June 9th on 38, 39, 40, and 41. The minutes of the Wood County Traffic Safety Commission on 42, 43. Humane Officers Report on 44. Various jail population figures starting on 46. I guess then they start again later. We have the coroner's report. I should have had 45. I apologize. As I flip these over and highlight them, I apologize. I had that. The coroner's report was on 45. And then we start with the jail reports on 46. You can actually see I went to this packet ahead of time and accidentally flipped along them, both on paper and electronically. Starting on page 47 again, one of the things that I really wanted to highlight here, and this is kind of a kudos to that whole committee and that whole department. I want you to look at the overtime breakdown on 47. And for those of you who've been here for quite a while, you remember when those numbers were excessively high. I think it's pretty amazing. It's almost zeros across the board on overtime there. If you look at page 48, I want to bring that to your attention too. The monthly savings versus out-of-county housing on a program that's been developed through cooperation of the judges that we have and our sheriff's department. Also a significant amount of money, and those were new programs that were established just a few years back, but think of how that impacts the bottom line of the budget. Page 49, kind of more of the same, as well as 50. That brings us to page 51 in the packet, and that is a resolution from the Public Safety Committee.
This will be Resolution 14-7-4, adopting the Wood County All Hazards Mitigation Plan. No fiscal note.
I have a motion by Al Warden, a second by Fire. Is there any discussion on this resolution? Any discussion? Please vote. That resolution also passed 19-0. Page 52 in your packet, minutes from the Seed Committee of July 2nd, as well as 53, 54, and 55. Pages 56 through 66. Various minutes of the Golden Sands Resource Conservation and Development Council, starting with their regular business executive committee minutes of May 14th on 56, and running through page 66. I'll give you a minute to go through those and see if anybody has a question. Supervisor Clendenning, for those of you who don't know, is our representative to that committee. Okay, page 67 in your packet, UW Extension, starting with Peter Manley's, our UW Extension Community Resource Agent, starting on 67 and running through page 74. 67 through 74, the various reports from UW Extension. Again, I'll give you a minute to go through those and see if you had any questions. Page 75 in the packet, the staff report from Jason Grunberg and the Planning and Zoning Office. That's page 75, 76, 77, 78, 79. The monthly report from Jerry Stewart and various reports from Land Conservation Office, starting on 80, 81. And then this brings us to two resolutions, both DATCAP. They're pretty much identical. Does anybody have a problem if we take these resolutions as a single order of business? Any objection to taking these as a single order of business? All right, if not, then I'd ask the clerk to please read both of those resolutions and we'll take them together.
On page 82, item 4-1 will be numbered Resolution 14-7-5 to seek County Board approval to amend the 2014 Wood County Department of Agricultural Trade and Consumer Protection grant budget for unanticipated state aid monies and to appropriate those monies to the DATCAP grant budget expenditures. Fiscal note, no cost to Wood County. The source of the funding is unanticipated revenue from DATCAP. The adjustment to the budget totals $16,500. The next resolution will be numbered 14-7-6 to seek County Board approval to amend the 2014 Wood County Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection grant budget for unanticipated state aid monies and to appropriate those monies to the DATCAP grant budget expenditures. Fiscal note, no cost to Wood County. The source of the funding is unanticipated revenue from the DATCAP. The adjustment to the budget totals $46,537.
Okay, looking for a motion to approve those resolutions by Hamilton, second by Wagner. Any discussion on either of these resolutions? Any discussion? Please vote. That resolution also passed 19-0. Page 85 in your packet will be another resolution from the Seed Committee. And as soon as Cindy gets ready, I'll ask her to read that resolution.
This will be Resolution 14-7-7 to approve zoning amendments to the Town of Rudolph zoning ordinance. Fiscal note, no county expenditure.
Motion by Hinkle, second by Hamilton. Any discussion on this resolution? Supervisor Hinkle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to explain that the county approves town ordinances as them not conflicting with the county ordinances. They don't have any other purpose. We don't have any other purpose in bringing it forward is to make sure that from the county's point, we don't conflict with wetlands or any of the other ordinances that are in place. I would also like to remind any other towns that have ordinances that this process should be followed through every time that you have amendments to your ordinances.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this resolution? Any other discussion? Please vote. That resolution also passed 19-0. In your packet, starting with the table of contents on page 87, is the animal waste storage ordinance. It goes pages 87 through 104. 87 through 104. Supervisor Hinkle, do you want to speak to that at all, why that's in there, or what you're doing?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This update of the ordinances basically brings us back into alignment with the state. It also updates the names of the oversight committees, since this had not been updated since we went to the 6 major committees. There are very few other changes. They are mostly changes in wording that the state has recommended. No changes in policy.
And you received a red line version of that, so you can see what it was. So, any other questions on any of 87 through 104? 87 through 104. All right, no questions there.
We need to take that on page 86, it is.
Yep, 86, I'm sorry, as I flipped that across to get to that first, I wanted to clarify that before we went that direction. All right, that brings us to the resolution on page 86. Any other?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'll do it. This is ordinance 14-7-8 to seek county board approval to amend the Wood County Animal Waste Storage Ordinance 801. Fiscal note, publication costs for the modification.
Okay. Entertained motion by Hamilton, a second by Mahan. Apologize for that too. As I flip through these, I want to make sure that we talk about,
You're out of sync too.
when we talk about it before we actually get to it. I sometimes like to get to the background information. So we have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any discussion on the resolution on page 180, on page 86? Page 86. Any other discussion? Okay, please vote. Thank you. That resolution passed 19-0. I got a better way of doing this too, where sometimes we put maybe the information ahead of the resolutions. Minutes of the Judicial and Legislative Committee of June 23rd on 105, 105, and 106, as well as 107. Attendance sheet on 108, notice of injury and claim on 109. Report from the Wood County Child Support Enforcement Agency on 110. And then that brings us to the resolution. Well, let's go this way again. I have the monthly report of the Judicial and Legislative Committee on 111, and that was on June 23rd. And then that will bring us to the resolution on page 112. And like I said, I deeply apologize. We pulled these out ahead of time because we had discussion, and then as we put them back in, they get flipped front to back sometimes. So if I could ask the clerk to please. Oh, jeez. Give me that back. I'm ready to go home. That was the whole point. I'd like to bring this before the board a second time today.
That's what you get for giving the gavel to him.
I'll take that.
Got the sword handed up.
That was the whole purpose of running that when we had everybody here who spoke to the issue. So I greatly apologize for that. All right, let's try page 114. I should have left it out of the packet after we voted on it instead of sticking it back in there. The Highway Infrastructure and Recreation Committee, 114. I've used up all my mistakes for the whole year already. That's July 2nd, page 114, the HERC minutes. Page 115, continuation of the same, as well as 116 and 117. Page 118, updates from various supervisors within the Parks and Highway Department, starting on 118, 119, 120. The Director's Report, Chad Schooling, you're going to hear his annual report here shortly on 121. The Forest Administrator's Report on page 122. minutes from the Aging Disability Resource Center of Central Wisconsin on 1/23, 1/24, and 1/25. Their minutes from May 8th on 1/26. We have the minutes from the Macmillan Memorial Library Board of Trustees on 1/27 and 1/28. South Central Library System Board of Trustees of May 22nd and 1/29, 1/30, 1/31, and 32. And then we have the Space Needs Study Implementation Committee minutes of May 20th on 1/33. And we have a special order of business for them also here following that. Again, I want to apologize that I flipped those pages. I should just take them out of here. You guys did a better job electronically than I did flipping along page by page. How's that coming before we finish up? Everybody pretty easy to follow along? We're going at an appropriate speed, other than me in the crowd? Okay. Go ahead.
You talked with IT this morning. They made themselves available an hour before county board, so you could ask questions. They helped you out a little bit. They'd like to ask you to bring your iPads to Lisa in IT. There's some updates, some system updates they need to do to your iPads. Only take about 5 minutes, so they would like you to drop off your iPads with Lisa at an opportune time for you.
Bill?
I think it's great that our vouchers are on there, because now you're not contaminating, because carbonless paper is very contaminating for recycled paper. I know in the paper industry, if we would get recycled paper in that, and carbonless paper, it would ruin a whole vat of paper. So glad to see you discontinuing it.
Thank you, Supervisor Fernandez. Are we ready to go into the special orders of business? Oh, Supervisor Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a real quick question. On this open house, is there any plans for the public to have the same opportunity? And do you have any dates already scheduled?
I think we're welcome at that same event.
Yeah, we're going to announce the open house to anybody that wants to come. I just wanted for you guys to get it on your calendars so that you would know. And like I said, it's still tentative because we're not sure everything's going to be ready and everything, but that's kind of the plan. And it will be open to the public, and we certainly would like the county board supervisors to come because you were kind enough to finance the project, and we appreciate that.
Yeah, so to reiterate, just, early warning, we anticipate that date, but as it gets closer, we'll roll that out.
Yeah.
Supervisor Fire.
Thank you. I think the safety committee has a budget meeting right after county board that day.
Right.
So, because we have to get ready for so I think that we may have a problem, some of us getting there, unless you do it a little later.
Well, I think we're going to run it like from noon to 4 or noon to 5, so there'll be plenty of opportunity for people to come.
Thank you, thanks, man. All right, I guess we go into special orders of business, and Supervisor Roser, you were first.
Just touch it. All right, Amy, bring your little body up here and help me.
Turn the O-N-O-F-F.
Oh, I think I went into sleep mode.
Is it sleep mode?
It's in sleep mode.
Yeah, there it's coming back.
It's coming.
There we go.
I'll make sure there's no.
Yeah, that.
It's Chad. Yeah, I'm gonna need your password.
Oh, Chad needs to put his password in
To join
because
up.
it's been asleep too long.
Thank you. Security's important here.
Good morning. I appreciate the opportunity to let you guys know what we've been doing. Thank you very much. The last Space Needs Committee, I put a book in with all the agendas and the notes and the minutes and everything. And so this is the 3-ring binder that I kept for this Space Needs Implementation Committee. This right here is a compilation of all the reports that Venture Architects, I really am in the finance mode, Mike, Venture Capital. Venture Architects did for us, and we have sent these to all of the county board supervisors, and we will make it available to the public as well. I'm going to focus just on that final recommendations report, but I will refer to some of the appendixes that are at the end of that, at the end of this binder, and you got it electronically. Because some of that, Mr. Kane, who was the architect from Venture Architects, alluded to in previous presentations, and then, so you already have some of those, we just found them. Now, for you who are new on the county board, this was a November 2012 report that the original committee did when the space needs assessment was done. And this is a report that I did at that date, and this is available, so if you have not gotten a copy of this, let us know, because we certainly can get that to you. And what I'm going to present today actually springboards on this report that was done almost 2 years ago now. It's hard to believe it's been that long, okay? So in your email that you got, we have these final recommendations. Now, there was some discrepancy in our committee whether we were actually supposed to bring recommendations before the county board. So we decided that these would be Venture Architects' recommendations, and as you see on the recommendations page, not the executive summaries, Mr. Kane does say here that the recommendations presented represent the collective thoughts and opinions of their working with us. So this is the table of contents, and this is the list of people. And I have to say thank you to all these people that participated. This is a huge project. Mr. Bry was on, Supervisor Bry was on the first committee, and he and I worked on the report that came out in November of 2012. But all the other elected officials that are listed here, all the county staff, they were very helpful. Initially, when our county clerk was kind enough to send out an initial evaluation asking people what their space needs were in their own departments, and then as we toured departments and as we talked to department heads, and then when Mr. Kane came on board, when we hired Venture Architects as a consultant, he went back and talked to a lot of those people. And so we appreciate everybody's input. I guess if we put everybody's name down, this acknowledgement page would be way too long. But we appreciate the department heads, the county board supervisors that provided input, the people that attended our meetings and spoke during public comment. We really are most appreciative of their input. This is the executive summary, and if you look at the executive summary, it kind of encapsulates all of the things that we did. And I really want you to look at the bulleted points, because the bulleted points were really the scope of services that we had Venture Architects come on board. We knew that talking about the implementation of the things that the committee had identified 2 years ago needed much more expertise than we had on our committee. And so the county board funded the Venture Architects, and then they hired an engineering consultant firm that came in and talked about the infrastructure actually within this building. This is a 1950s building. It served us well for many years. Our maintenance department has done a marvelous job with keeping up a lot of the infrastructure, but we've really sliced and diced this building almost to the point where it doesn't meet departments' needs anymore in providing the services that they provide, because services have changed over the 50, 60 years that we've been using this building. And I'll go into some of those more specific things as we move through this report. So we worked on all of these things. We had talked about 5 to 10 years in our original recommendations, but they wanted us to think beyond the 5 or 10 years. They wanted us to think about a 20-year strategic plan. Mr. Kane kept repeating over and over again, be careful how you spend your dollars. Spend them strategically. Don't decide to put up a wall and then 5 years later you're going to tear that wall down because you haven't thought strategically how that is going to fit into the big picture. So he was made us very aware that we needed to think strategically about that. And then we're going to move, this is the important part, we're going to move through the report. The recommendations presented represent the collective thoughts and opinions of Venture Architects as the facilities planner and architect, the board members of the county's ad hoc space needs study implementation committee, and selected department heads and staff. Collectively, we believe these recommendations provide the county board the necessary information to successfully plan for addressing the county's long-range facility space needs. Now, the devil's always in the details, and these are nothing but conceptual drawings. We're not recommending, or Venture Architects is not recommending that a particular building go here or a particular building go there. They're not recommending whether we put basements in and things like that. They just helped us to conceptualize what the collective thoughts and opinions were of how to meet the space needs. We had talked about these 4 bullet points when I did the presentation in November of 12. We really wanted to increase departmental efficiencies, improve customer service, pay for today but correctly plan for tomorrow, and then maximize the cost-effective use of our construction dollars. The list that you see there for the priorities, you know, they're a list. They certainly can be changed. We have to discuss these, how to fund these at the executive committee. And I want to update you and then talk about these priorities. We have 2 centers of government. We have a center of government in Marshfield and we have a center of government in Wisconsin Rapids. When our space committee met, we knew that we wanted to maintain a presence in Marshfield. And we wanted to show Marshfield that we were committed to that Wood County government presence in Marshfield and not have to have people come down to Marshfield, to Wisconsin Rapids, to the county seat all the time for their services. We have been renting space for about 20 years in the Marshfield City Hall, and so one of the priorities was to relocate the departments that were located in City Hall to our Wood County Annex and Health Center, formerly known as the Norwood Campus. We have accomplished that, and I pulled out some, I don't have everybody's with me, but we have moved Veterans Services, the Sheriff's Department, and the Health Department to the Wood County Annex and Health Center on Chestnut Avenue in Marshfield, behind Culver's. I just pulled out the Health Department savings. Last year, the Health Department was to pay $16,097.16 per year. Their new rent space in the Wood County Annex will be $5,139 a year. Now, granted, they're only there 1 day a week, but we have made significant savings moving those departments. And I'd like to thank Rock and Sue Comferman, along with Kathy Alf, because she was very involved in the move. They painted their own walls in their place they stayed, and Sheriff Reichert. Change is always hard, and it's hard to get people to think about doing things a different way. But they are now relocated. The only department that is still in Marshfield City Hall is Human Services. They are moving all to 1 floor, but we have, we really need to get them out of City Hall too. We don't know, we don't have a crystal ball, we don't know what the city of Marshfield is going to do with the current City Hall that they're in. I'm not assured that there won't be a change in location of city government in Marshfield. And so we need to plan, if they abandon that building for city government, to have something prepared for human services. And we're going to talk about what some of the discussions were. In the Wisconsin Rapids area, security needs have risen to the top every time we have talked about what we've needed to do. And not only security needs in our court system, but other departments have security concerns as well. And so they rose to the top, and some things we looked at conceptually did not. I'm going to go to sleep because I don't bother this enough. Chad, did I lose it again? Confound it. Okay. Oh, I see it on the picture there. It's coming back. Do I just need to touch this every now and then to keep it from, oh, I don't want to be there. Oh, there I want to be. Okay. We conceptually approved a fourth judge if the state ever funds a fourth judge. So we would need support staff for that other judge. We would need a courtroom for that judge. So we have kind of talked about all of that, and you'll see in some of the conceptual drawings what we've thought about that. One thing that you do need to know, and Sheriff Reichert made this perfectly clear, the jail is not driving this discussion, and I want to reiterate that. The cost-saving measures that the Sheriff's Department has put in place, the Sheriff thinks will make that jail viable for about a generation, which is about 20 years. So that's been a big concern because people have said we don't want any more jail space, and we are assured that the jail is not driving this discussion and probably will not need to be dealt with for at least 20 years. But the court system is a big piece of that, and the Sheriff's Department is too. I don't know how many of you all have ever toured really what people do here. I never had until I got on this committee. The Sheriff's Department is scattered all over this courthouse. They have an evidence room down here, they have an office over here, they have stuff over there, and it really does not create a lot of efficient use. We have parking problems, and along with parking problems, I would add to that accessibility to the courthouse. We have very limited handicapped parking. Now with the roundabout, crossing Baker Street is going to be an issue. We have talked about parking. In one of your attachments, there is a wonderful evaluation of parking needs by department. And so every department head kind of estimated how many parking spaces they would need. Now, if we move toward a downtown campus and bring all of human services back to a downtown campus, then of course that increases our parking needs. Supervisor Allwarden, who has some mobility issues right now, talks to me every time we meet about how difficult it is for somebody with mobility issues to get into this courthouse. There's a little incline as you come up into the main entrance. That can be problematic depending on people's mobility issues. We only have one elevator in this courthouse. When that elevator is down, the maintenance department has been known to carry people from one floor to the next because we have to make sure that people can get around. So that's all been talked about. We have specific department space needs, and we'll get into that. Oh, I already did that. And then the bringing human services. And then our infrastructure, that whole report that is in that addendum on from the engineering firm talks about toilets and elevator and IT service. And then we have to make a decision about that annex building over there. So that's kind of the priorities. Now let's just talk about some of the details, okay? Move county developments out of Marshfield City Hall to the Norwood campus. Well, that's now called the Wood County Annex and Health Center. And like I said, we've pretty much moved in that direction. Now what we've got on this slide is kind of two phases: Veteran Services, Health Department, Sheriff's Department, and Amy, our director of our IS, would really like a presence in Marshfield. You know, we've invested, Mr. Wagner talked about our tower project, or somebody did, I don't remember. But we pursued that tower project just because of what we wanted to do at the Wood County Annex and Health Center. We already had communication and data infrastructure problems in Marshfield. The physicians were complaining that they couldn't hook up very well to our communications and data network. So we had some issues, and we knew that if we moved departments onto that campus, because of where Norwood sits, kind of in the deep, in the deep there, we pursued those 2 towers that we needed to put up. Many of you know that the inpatient psych unit closed several years ago at St. Joseph's Hospital, and we met with the powers that be at Marshfield Clinic when they were contemplating closing that unit, because they wanted to know what capacity could we provide for them at Norwood to meet the needs of people. And so we've done some things at Norwood to improve that admissions unit, and then we needed that data and communications infrastructure to go along with that, okay? So what you're seeing here is we have 2 more problems here. We have a gym remodel. I don't know if any of you have been in the gymnasium at the Wood County Annex, but it is, I mean, you can't take more than 3 people in there without having to take 600 milligrams of ibuprofen, because you would have a horrible headache. The acoustics in there are horrible. And now that we have multiple departments in that building, we need to improve the acoustics to use that wonderful square footage. It's a beautiful space, but it is acoustically totally, it's not usable. So Venture Architects recommended that we hire an acoustical consultant. I guess I knew there were such things, but until he said that, and talk about some acoustic tile. We still have a sprinkler system that needs to be addressed. Norwood would still like to use that for playing basketball and things like that. So we need to address that. Sue Kunferman, the department head at the health department, would like to use it for WIC clinics. But when WIC clinic people come, they don't just come as adults, they bring like 3 or 4 or 5 kids with them, and so you would never be able to be in that building. So that is why the gym remodel, and remodel might be a wrong word for that, but we need to do something to it to make it more usable. And then you see that little purple building there. The recommendation from Venture Architects is that we do a slab-on-grade, single-story building that would be adequate square footage to bring the Human Services Department out of City Hall into, onto that campus. And so we talked a big deal about, a lot about, do we put a basement in that? I think we decided it cost about $50,000 to put a basement in there. I don't know if you've ever been over to the 12th Street, but they have a gorgeous basement that is totally not usable. If they would have just raised the ceiling another 3 feet and thought about putting an elevator in it, we could move Human Services all to the 12th Street building, but it's not a very decent building. Probably not an attached building. We have about 37 acres up there. There would be place to put parking, and then of course, how would we pay for that? It would be a little over a $2 million project, and that is going to be discussed at the executive committee meeting the next time, because as we talked about the budget with the highway moving into that, there really is a big picture, because we may be doing some other things to meet some of these space needs recommendations, okay? There is an addendum on your packet of information that we sent you. I think it's a J, Appendix J, called The Importance of Government Facilities in Downtown. It was a study done by the UW Extension in September of 2005, and it talks about a downtown campus for county government, or for all governments. The ad hoc committee, by consensus, committed itself to developing a downtown campus. Wisconsin Rapids, the city of Wisconsin Rapids was involved in that discussion. We have had subsequent discussions about how they could partner with us in developing that whole triangle over there. We own the annex building. There are some things that are being discussed. Nothing has been decided. It is all under discussion. But lawyers in town have said we really would like for everything to stay downtown. And there are some economic development reasons for keeping our municipal government, our county government downtown, and hopefully allow that to build around some restaurants, some retail space. And so that is a possibility, and there are discussions going on with Wisconsin Rapids city government about how to collaborate with that kind of a commitment to keep county government in downtown Wisconsin.
Donna, I don't want to interrupt your doing, but we do have Mayor Bruinks in the back also today, and those we have had some collaborative discussions as to what might be the best fit for them. And welcome, Mayor.
Yeah, now I got both mayors.
Now we have both mayors. Boy, we're really hot stuff today. Thank you for blessing us with your presence today. Okay. And then the third recommendation was to make a commitment to bring all Wisconsin Rapids County departments to the courthouse, to a courthouse campus. You know, this kind of shows you where we're kind of all spread over, and if we make a commitment to a downtown county government campus, it would be good for people just to be able to park somewhere and then go to multiple departments. So I think that was by consensus kind of in our committee as well, that we would like to see that happen. And then we'd have to create sufficient parking for all of that to happen, and additional parking could actually occur with a collaborative effort with the city of Wisconsin Rapids. There's also even been discussion about maybe closing Market Street and making it a pedestrian mall so that you would actually be walking back and forth from a downtown campus to maybe some retail restaurant areas over there. Okay. This is a big one because right now Wisconsin Rapids operates in about 5 different locations in Wisconsin Rapids. And so to consolidate the Wisconsin Rapids Human Services to a downtown campus would really help them to work more efficiently and cost effectively. And so the study's recommendation was to move all of those departments onto this campus. Now, how do we do that? Alrighty, well, we have some conceptual drawings here, and the sticker shock is quite alarming, and so there was a lot of discussion about talking about phasing this in. This is a picture here. Do I have a little laser on this? On the right-hand side? Oh, the center button. Oh, there it is. Okay. So this is our courthouse right here. This is the parking across the street. Here's the annex building that we own. Here's that whole triangle right here that we're talking about. Here's Market Street. Here's our parking across the street. Should have drawn the roundabout in there. Huh?
Could you use the one back there?
Well, so when I do it here, it just doesn't jump right over? Okay. Well, shoot.
You're missing some of the.
Well, okay. Okay, you know what I'm going to do?
And Trent's not real thrilled that they're aiming
Yeah, I'm
either.
thrilled with her aiming that thing.
Can I zap you, Trent? That would be wonderful.
Take your best shot.
Okay. So, as you can imagine, we've had some of these adjacent property owners come and speak to us during our public hearing part and expressing concerns about this, that, and the other. And I'm just going to tell you that those concerns are being heard. And we've done a lot of talking about what could possibly be done. We've got this area right here, and Supervisor Brew, I think it was, said, why don't we fill that in, and then we would have, you know, some continuity between here. So I've got a drawing that I'm going to show you where this is actually filled in, and then a building comes across here. Now, closing Avon Street and relocating those utilities, I've got a figure here about what they said it would be. It would be around $500,000 for engineering and other non-construction costs to relocate those utilities. Now, if we, talk with the city of Wisconsin Rapids and we're able to do something over here, then perhaps the closing of Avon Street would not be necessary. And there was some discussion about bringing like a new justice center, and it wouldn't have to come out this way. It could go this way. And then a new entrance be put in here with some handicap parking close by. That will have to be discussed, and if we went ahead and relocated utilities and closed Avon Street, it certainly would then open up the possibility of a building. Now there's a building, there's a drawing on here where the addition that they want on here is actually bigger than the courthouse. So the footprint obviously is not, is not in detail right now. This right here is Eric's building, and I always like to bring up, Eric's not here today, but I always have to make sure that we let him know that we're not going to forget his building, because in the earlier conceptual drawings there were buildings there, and Eric kept saying, and where are you going to put me, and where are you going to put me? Well, we want to make sure that we don't forget about Eric, okay? So that is described right there. This would be the third floor plan for addressing courthouse security needs. What this would be, let me see, I have to turn around and look at this. So this right here is a conceptual drawing where some of our courtrooms would be in a new addition, and these courtrooms would stay. And then we have talking to the judges about bringing the higher risk trials into the new courtrooms. Prisoner movement would be through a new elevator that would come in. My word. It would be through a new elevator that might be put in this right here. And of course this is first floor, moving the, tell you here, judge's office, and then a new jury room. So that's all to be determined, okay? There was a lot of concern about prisoners walking through the courthouse and things like that. Notice that there are attachments with each of those, and if you flip on that attachment, you can go ahead and look at that.
Was I the only one that didn't get those attachments, or am I just dumb enough to get them?
Did we send, did you just send the final report out? Okay, we'll get them to you.
I think it's an email, Trump. Sydney sent them out email rather than...
Yeah, I got the final report in that email, but I can't get attachments. I didn't know if I was doing something wrong or not, but the attachments I did not see on that final report that was emailed to us.
Just the final report is all I sent.
So we will send that all to everybody, okay? Now, we have courthouse needs with the dispatch center. You remember years ago we told the dispatch center they'd be in temporary housing, and they're still where they are. Oh my gosh, now our battery.
Time's up.
Time's up, I have to stop. Okay. We need to relocate the dispatch center, emergency management, and the systems department. And hopefully we could get them up to the second floor. And like I said, the devil's always in the details and the drawing. And then we need some additional space for all of these departments. All the departments here that are listed are departments that have said, I need more space. Now somebody said to me, oh, we're growing government. No, we're not really growing government. We're just making adequate space for the government that's already here. I keep telling the story about when I toured the district attorney's office, I actually got claustrophobic. They absolutely, I'm a nurse and I run up and down the floor, the unit all the time. I could have a patient in 315 and one in 302 and I'm back and forth. I cannot, and I guess I'm a little ADD and that's good for me, but I could not imagine just sitting in one of those little, with no window and a little cubicle, and so there are space needs that we have. So if you look at attachment C, and we'll go ahead and get that to you. There's the roundabout, some car parking, and you know, all of this is totally contingent on our discussion with Wisconsin Rapids, because all of this could change in a heartbeat if there's a real good collaborative effort to develop a committed downtown area. Now, this is the one that Lance was talking about. My gosh, Don, the space they're telling you to do is larger than the courthouse. Well, that is true, and we're certainly not going to go to that. But here is the courtyard filled in right here. Here could be a human services building. We're not going to worry about the jail right now. And that doesn't have to go that way. It could go this way if we closed Avon. But this scenario would necessitate the closing of Avon. The other option would be is to put a new court system right here and then remodel the current courthouse to bring all the human services, possibly the health department back, and then remodel all of this for existing department space needs. Parking, so court system possibly, okay? This one right here would address the security needs that everybody, it seems to rise to the top. Because if you had to enter a new courthouse building, a new building that had just the courts in it, you could manage your security a whole lot better. And then that little purple spot right here would be a new entrance, and you could address new toilets, a second elevator, and address some of the infrastructure issues that we have. Okay, and that would be a phased in. Build a freestanding, we just talked about that. That's what we just talked about there. This is just, and then that's our last one. Work in partnership with the city of Wisconsin Rapids in the development of the city block directly west. That would be this triangle right here, including the annex building. So this whole area right here. And then this is Market Street. And with a redevelopment of this whole area here, perhaps the closing of Avon would not be necessary, and then we could address a human services building with some retail and a restaurant in it or something like that, but that's also far in the future. I'll probably be long gone before that discussion ever takes place. And then in your engineering attachment, which is attachment D, it talks about the cost of improving the HVAC system. We have electrical problems in this building. A lot of different issues, boiler pump, new chiller pumps, temperature controls in the building, transformers to address the electric needs. They are all there. Cost, like I said, sticker shock is there. Freestanding human services building in Marshfield, about $2.6 million, and that's just on slab without a basement or an elevator. Then down at recommendation number 6, you've got the total project cost of a new justice center at $63 million. Just a courts and a sheriff addition would be $37.1 million. To remodel the courthouse to address the remaining department needs would be $4.9 million. Courthouse infrastructure upgrades, 2.7, and then the jail is not driving this. Here are some more costs along with priority 1 and priority 2 needs to address infrastructure deficiencies. So that is that in a nutshell, and the next step is to have, I think that our executive committee chairman put a agenda item on the executive committee agenda for our next meeting. As we move into budget discussions, This is going to have to be broken down, and there's going to have to be a discussion about what recommendations we move toward at this time. I think the consensus of the ad hoc committee is that we address the Marshfield freestanding human services building, just because we don't know what's going to happen at City Hall, and we don't want to be caught short by City Hall saying, you know, we're abandoning this for city government and you have to get out, and then we don't have any place to move human services and they end up being in rental space. So I'll be glad to answer any questions or any of the committee members, but that's our next step, is to have a discussion at the executive committee about how we phase this in, what do we do, how do we fund it, and then move from there. I guess one other thing I want to say is, now that we've changed the branding of Norwood, because there was a lot of concern about moving other departments into Norwood, because people had negative connotations, and you've all heard the jokes about, well, maybe you need to spend some time at Norwood and those kind of things. And so people were fearful about moving to that campus. We're trying to address that. We've already renamed the campus to the Wood County Annex and Health Center. We were supposed to replace a roof last year. We took that out of the capital improvement because we thought we would wrap that up into a larger project if we needed to. We need to do some facade changing to just kind of change the way the building looks, so that when you drive up to it, you're just not thinking Norwood. And so that will hopefully, maybe some change that will be rolled into a larger project as well. Any questions?
I think to sum this up, 60 years ago roughly, some people made some pretty good decisions, because this building has suited our needs for a long time. We want to make sure that we make the right decision as we go forward into the next 20, 30, 40 years. And while I'm doing that, I certainly want to thank, like I said, Mayor Meyer, who's here, and our city council members who've had some patience while we move from City Hall to Marshfield into the facilities at Norwood, and have accommodated us in some continuing needs. And I also want to thank Mayor Bruink, who has engaged us in the discussion as to how any improvement, addition, or construction we would do down here would benefit the city and not negatively impact it. So I want to thank all those who've been involved in the process. So that's kind of where we're at. Thank you, Darren, very much. We have one more special order of business today. Chad, we saved the best for last, because you always have park pictures. We have Chad Schooley, our Parks Administrator, part-time IT guy. Yeah.
I laid it up there.
Slide over here.
And for those of you who don't know the other gentleman who's going into the jury box, Fritz Schubert, our forester. He's the gentleman responsible for that $400,000 to $500,000 we see every year roll into our coffers through timber harvest.
All right, well, good morning.
Good morning.
I think, yeah. Call me naive, but I did earlier think that the full house that we had was just for park and forestry, but evidently that was not true. As Chairman Kimmel mentioned, we're going to change it up a little bit this year. Typically I do the presentation, but I guess I had the feeling that sometimes the forestry end of our department kind of gets the short end of the stick as far as letting you know as a county board, but also the public, what actually is involved with the management and what actually happens on county forest property. So Fritz will be kind of following up after I do the parks end of things. So we'll get going here. As you can see, this 2013 was the 78th year of our department. Basically what we try to do is we try to follow our mission statement, which is stated here, to develop, maintain, and operate facilities, resources and programs that meet the outdoor recreation, environmental, and economic needs of the public and provide clean, safe, quality family enjoyment at a reasonable cost. As many of you are aware, there are thousands of acres that we are responsible within our department, whether it be in the parks or the forest properties. This is just a list of individuals on our end that are responsible for that, our full-time, as well as lists some of the numbers of the LTEs that we have throughout the year as well. Just a couple notes on there. We did, through retirement, lose one of our long-term employees last November. Harold Trickle was our lead maintenance worker out at Southwood County Park, and he did retire after 40-plus years with us. So we miss him, but we did move forward and we did fill that position. Along with our paid staff, we also have several clubs and volunteers that we work with on an annual basis. This is just kind of a brief snapshot of some of those individuals. I'll kind of get into some of the park events that we've hosted in 2013. Many of them are returning events. Actually, I think all the larger events from last year I have covered in past years, but they are very, very large events that not only support our parks department, but also the communities that they're hosted in as well. So a couple of these pictures are from just set up from the Encourage Community Foundation annual picnic. We are in the planning stages now of holding the, I believe, the third annual picnic out at Lake Wazeecha. The bottom picture obviously is something that you're all familiar with, and that's the State Water Ski Show, which, by the way, is going on starting this Thursday. So preparations have already begun on the site and everything there. So very large event for the community. Works out great every year. So a few more pictures. Kiwanis youth events, the triathlon out at Lake Wazeecha. We are also host to several nonprofit fundraising events. The one on the bottom just shows a picture from the Jeremiah's Crossing fundraiser out at Dexter County Park, along with the car show. Winter events, you know, we operate year-round, obviously, so we also have a couple fisheries that are located on our lakes, NEPCO as well as Dexterville. And the bottom two pictures are just, again, a Kiwanis winter youth event out at NEPCO County Park. Our shelter buildings are kind of the hub for many of these events, and we take good pride in not only maintaining them, but also bringing them up to speed over the years. Many of them were built back in the 30s and 40s, so just bringing them back up to today's code, basically. But the lower left-hand picture, you can see our newest shelter to our fleet, basically our Red Sands Beach Pavilion. And last year was the first full year that we rented that out, and it had a lot of good reception out there, so we had a lot of rentals. This is just a summary of our different rentals that we have throughout the year. The lower right-hand corner, you can see we had a total of 312 total reservations in 2013. If you just take into account the different types of events out there, but also just imagine how many people come for those events, and it's thousands of people that come into our community, and we're happy and we're glad that we can host those people. Obviously, the Parks Department in our campgrounds, they come and enjoy those, but they also, obviously, we can't accommodate all of them throughout the year. They're also visiting our area hotels and gas stations and things like that. So this is just a 3-year summary of our shelter reservations. As you can see, it's last 3 years it has had slowly increasing the number of reservations. Camping is a large revenue maker, but also pretty intense management of our parks within the summer months. This is just a tally of reservation methods, just for your information. We do have a website which Systems created a few years back, and that's been very popular. It's a 24/7. You know, you can make reservations any time of the day or night. But we also still receive those via walk-ins, telephones, as well as self-registration out on the site. This is a pretty interesting slide. We've done this the past few years, but it basically tracks zip code by zip code how many campers are from Wood County versus out of Wood County. Last few years, it's been close to 50%, but it has been actually upticking from outside Wood County visitors. So that's a good thing. You know, the more people we can bring in from outside, the better I believe the area will be as well. So here's just a tally of the occupancy. These are camping unit nights, so basically the number of nights that our campsites have been occupied. Last year was another very good year. As you're all aware, and Fritz will actually touch base a little bit more, but we did have a large storm that we had in Dexterville, wiped out a lot of our trees in the first loop. So when all things were said and done, we actually did a very, very good job as far as keeping those numbers up last year as well. Obviously, our lakes are a big attraction, lakes and rivers in Wood County. This is just a 3-year total on our boat landing parking passes, just to give you an idea of how many people utilize our boat landings. And this is for Southwood County Park and NEPCO, as well as Dexter County Park. Powers Bluff, obviously, is our big winter hub. Changing gears a little bit, but this is for our cross-country ski pass totals. Last 2 years, obviously, have been very good years with the natural snowpack that we had, both on cross-country ski trails, but also the Powers Bluff area. So you can see what a difference it makes when we have sufficient snow in the total number. Last year with 364 passes sold. Excuse me. And this is even a larger discrepancy if you look at 2012-13 when we had snow versus the previous year when we were open, I believe, 4 days total. So last couple of years have been very good as far as numbers and revenue and things like that. Big picture, you know, there's always people that ask, you know, how much revenue do we bring in? You know, we have the campgrounds, shelters, things like that, and we do bring in a very large amount of revenue. However, our department is still reliable on tax levy, and if you look at that bottom row there, it gives a 3-year tally on tax levy that we relied on. Last year was $620,000. So you can see what revenues we bring in as well as what expenses it costs to maintain, develop, and manage our parks. So this is just a clip of the annual report that the Department of Tourism comes out with. It highlights basically the impact of visitor tourism dollars in Wood County. As you can see, in 2013, the direct visitor spending increased by 4.77% for an estimated $81 million. So obviously, we're not the only ones involved in this, but with all the events that we host and attractions within our park, we do play a large part in this, the visitor numbers. This is just a breakdown of all of our revenues that we receive throughout the parks. Typically, our two major revenue creators are timber harvest, which Fritz will talk about, but also our camping revenues. And then there's also the other smaller areas as well. This is the same information, but basically just showing the difference between 2012 and 2013. Some of the projects that we completed in 2013, like I said, there's some development, but there's also some rehab work that we do. The top two pictures are actually a remodel job that we did in-house of our lower shower building, which is located at Northwood County Park. We basically put new ceilings, tiled the floor, basically not a full gut out, but pretty close to it. Made some things ADA accessible, things like that. So the bottom picture is a new playground that went in last spring out at Northwood County Park at our campground. Dexter County Park, the top two just show a couple roofing projects that we completed. The bottom two are actually a replacement vault toilet. This was one of the fatalities at our Dexter County Park windstorm. So that was actually a replacement from that storm. Southwood County Park, if you ever go around the lake, you'll notice we have more and more individuals that have donated memorial benches. Really is a great program. And as I said, we're seeing more and more requests of that. I guess it's our job to kind of figure out what the best needs are. We don't want to have benches everywhere, but there's plenty of room around the lake to have those permanent benches. A couple more projects at Lake Wazeecha or Southwood County Park. We installed a new parking lot at our new Red Sands Beach Pavilion. Has worked out great so far. There's a lot of use in that area with the 3 shelter buildings now, so there really was a need to separate the parking. The lower 2 pictures, it's kind of hard to see, but we did some sidewalking around that pavilion as well as upgraded second loop camping from 30 amp to 50 amp, which we've continued to do the last few years as well. This picture is from Nepco County Park. As you noticed in the clubs that we've worked with, one of the groups is the Consolidated Muskie Club, and we've worked with them a few times now over the past 5 years. We actually get an annual grant. It's called a County Conservation Grant, and one of the eligible funding is for stocking fish, and this particular group has come forward and basically cost shared this grant. It's a 50-50 grant. They've come up with the 50%, which the county was responsible for. You can see here the DNR staff actually mark and identify these fish, so when they are caught in later years, they can tell, the survival rate and how fast they're growing and things like that. So the bottom 2 pictures are just of our shelter building. After we had that completed, it was quite glaring that we should have incorporated more storage in it. So this is actually a wing that was completed last year for our tables and chairs. Powers Bluff, the top left picture as well as the bottom picture are just pictures of the homestead that we had done a land trade with a few years ago. We completed the cleanup of that farmstead last year, as well as put in a small parking lot for hikers and hunters. As you can see, we did leave the silo remaining, and we haven't decided yet, but we have been looking into options for utilizing that as a base for a lookout tower. So we're looking at different options there.
Chad, you should mention that Supervisor Nelson, when he was on our committee, had a brilliant idea of what we could do at that silo, and he was going to be the first one to use it. It was a zip line from the top of the Powers Bluff down to that silo. So Jerry, when we build that, bottoms up, buddy, you're heading down that
You're the
thing.
first one down.
Hurry up.
Another portion of our department, and Heather Garrett is here. She is the snowmobile and ATV coordinator, but we did complete a snowmobile bridge construction project, and this particular one is over the Hemlock Creek. And so that's another portion that we're involved with within our department. And I guess that's it for parks, and if you have any questions at the end, that's fine. Otherwise, I'm going to ask Fritz to come up and kind of go over some county forest items here.
All right, gotta confess, this is the first time I've done one of these PowerPoints, so hopefully this will work better for me than it did for Donna.
Yes.
Welcome to the county forest. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
The county forest is an asset to Wood County, not only for its revenue, but also for the recreational and tourism aspects and environmental aspects as well. I want to start out just kind of by hitting some of the high points and provide an overview of the county forest system. County forests in the United States are really fairly unique. I'm not sure if any of you are aware, but they exist only in 3 states, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Michigan. Wisconsin has 29 county forests, Minnesota has 15, Michigan has 1. The acreage in Wisconsin, as you can see, is about 2.4 million acres. Wood County, let's see here, there it is. Wood County is the 19th largest county forest with 37,000 acres. Just to kind of give you some perspective, you can see where the county forests are in the counties in green on that little map. Douglas County is the largest county forest with 277,000 acres. All the county forests in Wisconsin are managed under State Statute 2811, which kind of outlines how they're established and the partnership that the county has with the state in managing that land. Most of the county forests were established in the late 20s and early 30s. Probably the biggest and most noticeable aspect, I think, with my committee. What's going on here? Is that bothering anybody?
No, go ahead.
Not only with my committee, but I would imagine with the county board as well, has to do with the timber sales and the revenue that are generated. In 2013, we had a total of let's see here, 11 timber sales, 517 acres of timber were harvested with a total bid value of $299,000. Typically our timber sale establishment acres is a little bit higher, around 750 acres. But in the last 10 years it has run anywhere from, let's see, 434 acres to 1,010 acres. The dollars generated per acre continues to rise, which is a reflection of markets. Part of Statute 2811 dictates or states that the county needs to share its county forest revenue with the townships that are affected by county forest. And so this graph shows the breakdown of the various townships that receive our revenue. It's 10% of the revenue goes to the townships based on the acreage of the county forest in each township. That's how it's apportioned. This is just a snapshot over time of our timber sale revenue. Thought it provided some interest. The last 2 years have been record years, and you can kind of see the way it fluctuates. It has kind of an up and down roller coaster effect. That's just historically the way it is. Sometimes I think it has a lot to do with the weather. Otherwise, markets sometimes play a role. But we've had some good years. I would expect that this year, I mean, I can't guarantee by any means that we'll make another record year, but we are almost at our budgeted revenue for the year, which was $310,000. We're getting very close to that point right now. So we're in good shape budget-wise this year. This might be a good time for me to throw in something. Another major activity on the county forest is something we do called recon, more properly called compartment reconnaissance. That involves, basically what it is it's an activity that we undertake to gather and update all our data on our forest stands, and we really can't make any management decisions or intelligent ones if we don't know the status of our forest. So every year we do a fair amount of recon updating. The goal is to update 5% of the acreage every year, which equates to about 18,000 acres. This past year we updated 5,170 acres. And so we exceeded that goal by quite a bit. But what that really does is allow us, it's really the first step in getting that timber revenue. It allows us to plan and to manage our forest appropriately. Sometimes, as you could see, our harvest dips a little bit, and that's because of changes in plans. You do the best you can to plan for things, but certain things happen that change your plans and impact what you can accomplish. Chad talked about the Dexter storm that we had back on August 7th last year, early in the morning on August 7th. These are some pictures of the cleanup. It was really quite localized event, but in Dexter Park, it made First Loop look really bad. And so we had to address that problem. And it impacted what I do in the forest, but you know, Dexter Park is actually part of the county forest. We were fortunate enough to have a logger on the county forest not too far away who was willing to move off of his contract to come help clean up this mess. Let's see, what can I say about it? We had a lot of people working out there, included at times all of our park staff, EG crews, the logging crew which I mentioned, which was from a corporation called Future Wood. They are a regular contractor with us. They bid on a lot of our timber. Here's another picture. This is a photo of the damaged area. That thing in the middle is Lake Dexter. To the west would be the park, the first loop of the park primarily. That was outlined in black there. The salvage started there and then progressed across the lake to the east side, and that's the direction that storm went. I don't know if anybody really confirmed if it was a tornado or not, but it was definitely strong winds. And we're actually still working on salvaging east of Highway 80. We still have a little bit of work to do over there, and in fact we bid out one timber sale this last spring, which is a salvage sale. Something to note, I guess, although it's maybe not the most ideal way to obtain timber revenue, we did end up, that whole area that was salvaged was 62 acres. It generated 145,000 board feet of logs and 547 cords of pulpwood. Revenue to the county was $48,241. You know, had that been a different situation, it probably would have generated more money per acre, but you also have to consider that it's a park, and probably not the best way to make money, but we did the best we could with what we had. And you know, the park is recovering. I don't know if anybody's been out there, but it is recovering. Just not as many big trees, but there's still a lot of trees left. Another thing that takes up time and is an effort on the county forest has to do with tree planting and site preparation. Perhaps people have noticed out on Highway 54 going west of Port Edwards, some blocks of county forest that have changed significantly over the last few years. That involves harvesting, a final harvest on a lot of our red pine. Red pine is a small part of our total forest resource, but it provides a really good revenue. But at some point, you have a final harvest of those trees and need to reestablish the timber stands. Sometimes we'll replant. And so this first picture on the upper left with the machine, that's called a power disc trencher, and essentially what that does is it creates planting sites on the site for new trees. Those rotors on either side create a trench, provide loose mineral soil that can easily be planted. This picture kind of tells a little story. The machine, the first trenching was done actually in 2012. Then in the spring of 2013, that was a 20-acre site. We planted 18,000 pine trees. That little one on the upper right, drowning in the water, was planted spring of 2013. And ultimately, it was so wet that spring, most of that site failed. The trees just can't handle that kind of water. But it did grow some really nice red pine at one time, and we feel it's worth trying to get it there again. And in the background with that disc trencher, you can see some of the mature pine that remains, and that's kind of what we're trying to grow. So then we had to retrench again this past fall in 2013. This spring, 2014, we replanted. That's what the little tree on the lower left is. That one was in a little bit of water too, but it did drain away. Maybe not quite as wet as last year, but still very wet. The last photo kind of shows what we're hoping it will grow into, is the mature red pine. Access management is another, I guess, significant portion of what we do on the county forest. And when I say access management, I'm talking primarily about vehicular access. In some cases, it's management that we're trying to prevent vehicles from getting in, either with gates or berms or boulders, and that's just to protect our forest. In areas, other areas, we keep roads open for the public to use, and we try to improve them. The upper right is a portion of one that we put some new gravel on and graded. And I think I've got some numbers here. Last year, we installed 2 culverts on a forest road and a gate. That gate that's pictured right there, and that's actually part of the snowmobile trail system as well. We put in a half a mile of gravel on that particular road, and mowed 6.1 miles of forest roads to keep the brush mowed down. Aside from the timber harvesting and the access management, we also, a big important portion of the county forest revolves around recreation, and I kind of believe that recreation is somewhat untapped. I think we could do more for the recreation part of the county forest. But I've highlighted a few things that do occur, some of the major ones. We have our ATV area that allows ATV use. In general, the county forest is not open to ATVs except in this ATV area. There's been a lot of interest to develop connecting trails, and that's been over the last several years a topic of discussion in our committee. There are some folks interested in developing those trails, and the county forest could be part of that program outside of our ATV area, which is basically a 10-mile system of loop trails. I don't have a great snowmobile picture, but the one on the upper right does depict snowmobiling in a way. The snowmobile trails are managed with our snowmobile trail coordinator, Heather, and through some local clubs. This one highlights the Vesper Snowdrifters. The county forest is an important part of that snowmobile trail system. It's certainly not the only part, but we do provide connections. Hunting, the young man in the lower left, I put that picture in because I think it's really nice. You may hear from some folks that there's no deer on the county forest. I know differently, and so does he. They're out there. I can't tell you where they go when the shooting starts. But a lot of our management does benefit the game species. It provides the habitat that they like. And another use is berry picking. Right now, the blueberries it seems to be a fairly good crop. If you can deal with the insects, you can find some pretty good berry picking on the Wood County Forest. These are just a few of the activities. One more that has become a little more prevalent on the radar screen anyway is our shooting range out at the intersection of Marsh Road and Ridge Road. The shooting range is it's actually on county forest, and we have had interest in trying to improve that range recently. Last year, we did do a slight improvement. You can see these people shooting are on some wood chips. We raised up those paths from the shooting station to the target areas with some gravel and shell rock, and then placed bark chips on top of that, wood chips. Because it is in a low area, and that was one of the problems, is just people getting their feet wet, especially in the spring. It does provide challenges in that there is a lot of cleanup involved. Most people don't pick up after themselves, some do, but it's something to manage. And typically the first cleanup, we have cleanup days that involve the There's a sportsman's club that helps with that, and they also construct target backstops and occasionally replace them. But in the spring is usually the worst time, and we're limited by our access. When it dries out enough, we will get in there and do it, but we do get comments about some of the mess sometimes. Outside of the game species that we manage for, we do have a few that we pay a little more, non-game species that we pay a little more attention to. Cunner blue butterfly is one of them. It's a nationally endangered species, and if we did not participate in what is known as the Habitat Conservation Program, we would have real difficulty managing our timber. So it's part of what just goes with the job. We survey our proposed timber sale sites for lupine, which is that flower to the right of the butterfly. The wild blue lupine is its key habitat that butterfly depends on. So we do surveys for them and adjust our management accordingly if we find anything like that to prevent harming. Also, we have another species on the forest called the red-shouldered hawk. It's a species of state special concern. It's not endangered yet, but it's a bottomland type animal, lives in river bottoms. And so when we know we're going to be working in an area, we hire a wildlife avian ecologist to do some surveys and confirm the absence or presence of these birds. And if we find a nest, an active nest, or even an old nest, we'll modify our management to work around it. A lot of times this ecologist will find active nests and invite us to come help him. He'll climb the trees and band the chicks, and he's got a kind of a mist net that he lures the adults in to capture and band them as well. So that one picture to the lower left, we really lucked out and got 3 that day and banded them. The other 2 gentlemen with me are Steve Grant and Gavin Hutchison from the DNR. I work real closely with the DNR foresters, and it's just part of what we do to live with the other creatures on the forest. Final photo, bald eagle. There's an active nest in Dexter Park. Some people maybe know about it. I was really concerned when that storm went through if that thing was going to make it, but it did. The nest stayed in the tree and the tree stayed upright, and I guess they were back this spring. And I guess this photo kind of explains itself. Thanks for visiting the Wood County Forest.
Want a quick historic perspective. You looked at those timber revenues back to about 1999. Sometimes we talk about money spent and money well spent. That was about the time that we started sending our forestry community to the forest conference every year to get a better handle on what good forestry practice was. And it probably cost us a few $1,000s to send that entire committee, but we took revenues from about $80,000 a year to close to $500,000 a year during that time. And obviously there's a trend line that goes up and down. The other thing that corresponded with that increase was bringing Fritz on board, who's done an outstanding job in our forest. So, I really want to thank him for that. I also wanted to mention, as Chad did, the water ski tournament this weekend. For those of you who have not toured all our facilities, you have the single largest event that happens in the county. It's a free event, and if you want to see how our parks are really utilized, you will probably see somewhere between 10 and 20,000 people out there on any day utilizing those parks. I had the opportunity the other day. It's been full for the last week. Every shelter, the beach, everything. But my wife asked me to walk around the lake the other day, which I didn't realize was quite that far. I got halfway around and was looking for a boat ride back across the lake. But she made a comment too how nice those memorial benches were, and she wanted to get me one. So I was a little concerned. So I didn't let her walk behind me the whole rest of the way, but they are really nice, and I rested considerably. Is there anything, we really appreciate the report. Is there anything else you want to follow up with? Any questions for these guys? Bill, Clendenin.
Show this weekend?
You just said that.
Oh, I didn't hear.
He never pays attention to me. And I'll say this, Supervisor Clendenin is out there all weekend, and he does spearhead a lot of the cleanup operation out there. You will see him there all day, every day pretty much. So invite the rest of you out. But that is for, if there's no other questions for them, Our next meeting is the 19th of August. I thank you for the report, it was excellent, as always.
Who's the camera? Who's the camera? Who are you?
Yeah, Channel 7.
Oh, thank you. Channel 7, Bill.
You might want to get the camera back. I think I was sleeping when you said where you were from nowhere. Anyway, that takes us to our regular order of business. Yeah. We'll let you know where we're going to be next month if it isn't here. We're scheduled for the 19th. That water ski tournament, that's at Lake Wazeecha, South Park, if you have a question. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Engel, second by Hamilton. All in favor signify by aye. Aye. We stand adjourned. Thank you.